Hey, and welcome everyone to another Energetic Arts Live video. Uh, Tonight we're going to have Andy on in a few minutes, and we're going to talk about the topic tonight will be connecting your spirituality with tangible reality. I think it's a really interesting topic, one that needs to be talked about, and we're doing it on the 18th of the 8th, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. Sydney time. So if you're joining us on the live stream, hit the like button, leave a comment in the box there so we know who you are. And if you can't make it, then here's Andy now. If you can't make it, that's fine. Just leave a replay comment when you do get on, and also hit the like button so the algorithm kicks in and it gets circulated. Hey Andy, how you going?
Hey buddy, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Sounds good. Everyone can hear.
Sounds good to me.
Let's see. All right, good. So yeah, once again, tonight's topic is
what is it
spiritual again? Connecting spirituality with tangible reality. And so
that's a big one.
Yeah, it's pretty huge.
Heads up.
It's kind of the whole point to spirituality, right?
It's kind of all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure if these are even connected. Are they? How's that? You still here?
I can still hear you. Yep.
Okay. Let me just put these away. Maybe we get back to them in a second. All right, so I guess the reason why I picked this topic tonight is because I don't know if you've seen this, Andy, but you go to these workshops, these retreats, you get this really abstract general overview on maybe a spiritual practice or two, and then you get home and it's like, now what, right? Maybe you start meditating, but it's like, how do I actually embody this? How do I integrate this? What do I use it for? Like, how am I actually going to make changes in my life, improve my life by being, spiritual, whatever that means.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is it's such a wide, could be widely defined,
Yeah.
And could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people in different contexts at different times in their life, in different aspects of their life. So yeah, it's a pretty wide topic. So I'm interested to see how we're gonna
how we're gonna dovetail this into something tangible.
I'm gonna let you be the leader.
All right, well, look, I'm just going to throw some stuff out there and then we'll see where it goes. Hey, look, I talk a fair bit about manifesting in this group because I think that's the key, right? It's like, how do you take this idea that everything's energy, that everything physical is the precursor to that is thought and emotion. How do you align those and collapse them down into something that you can hold in your hand, And so I know one of the exercises that we did a lot in these workshops in the last few years, and this is only an example. When I say, when I talk about these workshops, it's only because it's recent and a lot of people in this group have been to them and they know what we're talking about. But, when I started out on, learning about spirituality and energy and vibration and law of attraction, all that sort of stuff, I think I was like 19. And the whole point of why I got into it was to get something out of it, right? And I think that's why we all get in, is because we want something out of the whole investment of focusing on this stuff. So for me, it was, you know, I was really heavily into sport at the time. It's like, how do I use this to perform better, to get better results? And so coming back to the workshops, one of the exercises that we did was to manifest an object as a proof of concept. So what we did is we got our, you know, our tablet or our notepad, and we draw a picture of an object, something simple, something we weren't really too invested in if it worked out or not, something we weren't going to obsess about. And then we go into a meditation. We take the object into, you know, into the deepest state we could be in, and layer it in as deep as we could. And then once the meditation was over, you just sort of let it go and relax, and you wouldn't look for it, but you'd have this expectation that somehow, in whatever form, it was going to manifest and reveal itself to you. It was going to present itself to you. So for me, what I did is I was thinking, well, what's something that I'm not going to get in the way of, that if it doesn't show up, I'm not going to like start beating myself up over it, or, you know, start give food for the negative mind chatter to start grabbing onto. And I just thought, oh, look, animal totems, you know, because it's kind of a bit quirky, and animal totems.
Okay, yeah.
So I just pick an animal, right? What's the first one I thought of? The first one I thought of was a fox. And so when I went into the meditation, I dimensionalized this object like I was in Photoshop, and I'd make it as real as I could, right down to the little, you know, bits of hair and the color and the different color of the hair. And then I'd rotate it around and flip it and enlarge it and shrink it and all this sort of stuff in the meditation, just as an exercise. And then we came out of it, and within a day or two, foxes started showing up everywhere. It was ridiculous, and they still show up, you know. And so I post a lot of them in there to keep that going, because they just show up in my feed, but I see them all over the place. You know, it's like my reticular activating system is drawn to it now. I've trained the brain to sort for that. And so I thought, well, you know, people go, oh, okay, fox, great, who cares? But it was like, well, if I can do it for a fox or any other animal, because it's just a proof of concept, then what if I did it with money? What if I did it with relationship? What if I did it in business? What if I did it in health? What if I did it in every part of my life? Would it work? And so for me, that was the tangible connection from, you know, what do I do with all this woo-woo spirituality? Because it's no good to me if I can't do something with it. That was my idea. That was my thinking. Now, how do you feel about that? I mean, what's your opinion on that?
You know, I guess maybe as like, you know, sorry, just give me 1 sec, okay, mate? I just gotta do one thing. Just her at it. So, having a little whinge. Are you there? Can you hear me? Hello.
Sorry, I'm being dropping out. Looks like our connection is not as good as it could be. How do we connect into tangible reality? Well, let's see if we can get Andy back. Let's focus. Andy, come back to the live stream. See, anything can happen in these live streams. It's not all. It's not all perfect, obviously. So you got a few people in the group watching. Hey man, how you going? I've been following your progress of moving into, let's say, a new state, a healthier state, I think it's really cool. It's not easy, believe me. I've had my own challenges with letting go of old patterns. No, I didn't get the request yet. Try again. So while we're waiting for Andy to come back, one of the things that was really important is in manifesting whatever it is you want to create. Well, let's get into, well, do you actually create it is another question. We can get into that in a little while. Is that sometimes when you're really invested in the outcome, oh, really? Let's try. Oh, there we go. Here we go. Sometimes when you're invested in the outcome, I was just saying, is that it won't happen. That's all right, because you can be blocking it with your wanting it to happen. You know, you sort of need to have a relaxed energy, relaxed container, let's say, in the body for that energy, that consciousness and energy to flow through. And if you're sort of wanting it too much, like if you're trying to grab onto it, then you can actually push it away from you. I think the Buddhists call it ego grasping.
Yeah, clinging.
Clinging.
Clinging or grasping. So, you know, it's interesting. Just sorry, before I got cut off there, you were asking kind of my sort of take on that and on, you know, when I think back to, you know, because you mentioned a couple of times about the, what do you call it? The, not manifestation, but the law of attraction stuff, right? You know, and I think back to, you know, I guess my, whatever, you know, your spiritual journey. I mean, you're always on one. You don't, you kind of, this whole thing just is one. Yeah, you know what I mean? So sometimes it sounds funny to refer to it as that, but I guess when people start to become more aware of that as like a line of development that's within them, like anything, like playing guitar or like playing soccer or anything, where when we start to realize that, oh, okay, this is an intelligence that is within me, and I'm going to pursue the develop of that particular aspect of me, right, of who I am. And I think that, like, I remember when I first started kind of becoming more aware or interested in that field of study, you know, and coming across the stuff about like the law of attraction. And, you know, I remember at first I was very skeptical actually of that school of thought, because when The Secret, when that first came out, and this was, you know, it was on Oprah and everything was about The Secret and manifesting, and you know, where my mind went to in the very beginning was, well, you know, this may be part of the picture, but it certainly can't be the whole enchilada, right? Because I go, if, you know, manifesting a red car, if you're manifesting a red car, well, so then are we now saying that, you know, hate to go here, but like the Jews in Auschwitz, like that's their reality, right? That's where they're living in. So if we're manifesting a red car, or money or whatever, then they must have manifested that reality for themselves, right? So
Mm,
so
mm,
this so this was one of the first, or I shouldn't say one of the first. This was one of the things I wrestled with at that particular time in my, I guess, development in that area. And I had come from, grown up in a Christian home, went to church every Sunday, and not that my family was terribly religious, but it was just what you kind of did, and it was a part of, to be part of the community, and it's just something that was sort of passed down to them. They weren't strict, like God-fearing Christians or anything. It was more,
mm,
and my mom, for example, would always just say, really, this is about like loving and taking care of your neighbor and having an open heart and being a
mm,
good person, right?
mm, mm,
But then obviously that um, those lessons get taught within a certain framework in different religious groups or sects or cults or whatever, right? A lot of people are like trying to tell a particular story through a cultural embodiment of that teaching, right?
mhm,
And I remember first beginning the struggle with, well, wait a second. So in our sort of group, it's you have to have like, found Jesus or believe in Jesus to go to heaven, right?
mhm, mm,
Which I couldn't get my head around that, because at the same time we're going to school and learning about, you know, these tribes that have never been visited by Western man. And my thing was going, well, wait a second, how could that be? Because they clearly don't know about any of this. So is it just that bad luck for them, and that they end up,
mm.
they go to
No, they get a
hell? And
pass, didn't they? Didn't
yeah,
they get a
yeah, yeah.
pass?
Well, you know what I mean? Yeah. So these were like some of the first sort of like, things I wrestled with in my understanding of like spirituality in the very beginning, on that kind of fundamentalist sort of level. Not that it was a very fundamentalist church, but those thoughts and that sort
Mm,
of
mm,
story that, find Jesus and you're saved and you get into heaven is quite fundamentalist. And then as we sort of progress through, through inquiry or study or practices, we start to develop our line of intelligence around our, spirituality, and then coming across that sort of manifestation stuff and the um, law of attraction stuff. I kind of found myself in the same kind of a battle, going, well, okay, wait a second,
mm,
there's something here. Clearly our mind has a effect on our reality, and to kind of fast forward in my journey, looking back now, I go, well, of course it does, because all we ever experience is our mind, right?
mm, mm.
We don't get to
We don't know
experience
what's outside the box.
anything outside of it, right? It's like we us as human beings, and in our every day-to-day walk through our path in life, is we have experience through our sense contact, right? So we either view something or hear something or smell something or touch something, and then our brain responds to that, and it all unfolds in our mind, right?
Mhm, mhm,
So to kind of to to think that what we think about, or how we think, or what we focus on doesn't matter or doesn't have an effect is completely insane. Of course it does, because we're in it, we're living in our mind. But it's certainly not the only part of the picture, because we're our perspective just goes through this universe, bumping into other people's perspectives that can then have either a great or a horribly detrimental effect on our reality, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's one of the things that in the conversations about like manifestation or creating something, it's like, also let's not discount luck and all of the other things that are completely out of our control, that have just put us in a certain circumstance that we had nothing to do with, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That we're completely either really lucky or really unlucky, or somewhere in between, right? And where I think this can kind of like lead to in a wider discussion, because I think that, you know, having these discussions is always, I kind of come into them with a little bit of like trepidation, because I go, it's like trying to have a conversation when a bunch of people all speak a different language, right?
Yeah.
And every viewer, anyone that's watching or going to watch, they have, you know, like the language that we use is so weighted, and it's like, you know, you might say something like, if someone uses the word God, right, to one person, that has a connotation that's, you know, Santa Claus in the sky with a naughty and nice list that's checking in on you to make sure you're good little boys and girls, and everything we do has to be in service to him so that we can get into this heaven, right? Versus someone else's, versus someone else, when they say the word God, God is just everything. It's just all of this. It's the universe unfolding, right? So these conversations, I think it's almost like you have to start in a place and like get some agree on certain things in the beginning that are just the like truths of the universe, that we can all go, yep, okay, this is a fact, this is a fact, this is a fact, and this is, now you can begin the conversation about manifestation, right? Because you know, when I think about like when we say like, well, so for example, you were having you were recounting the time with the foxes, you know, creating this vision in your mind. So when we look at that, I go, okay, great. So let's talk about what's actually happening in that. Like, so, like let's use like almost a scientific approach to discuss like what's actually going on,
what's actually happening there
when you do that, right? So where I kind of go is, we actually should but before we get into that, we almost have to discuss the fact that, okay, well, what sort of dimension are we actually in, right? Like when you go to sit and do a visualization or meditation, well, what dimension are you in, and what are the dimensions that affect that, you sitting down and doing that, right? Act. So I go, just simply, I would go, okay, so really the I, right, and you, right? Well, really, you kind of almost go, well, that right there, we've made a bad distinction, right? Because we're going against what the actual real big truth is that there isn't we're not disconnected, right? So you kind of go like, oh shit, now we have to diverge down the rabbit hole over there for a second and discuss the fact that, oh yeah, let's all agree that it's all this one big interconnected soup, right? The idea that we're separate is true, but it's also not true, right? It's like in certain contexts it is, but the big picture shows that it really isn't. Okay, but when we talk about that visualization or meditation you're doing, okay, well, what's happening on a you level when you do it? Well, you're using interior of yourself, the singular you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of almost like, I love quadrants because I go, this kind of gives us a bit of a map to work with. We go in the upper left quadrant, that's the interior of you,
Mm-hmm.
the singular you, and then in the upper right quadrant would be the physical of you. So it's like on
Mm-hmm.
so on the left we have the
Interior,
interior, and on the right
exterior.
we have the exterior. And then we go down to the lower part and we have the collective, the we, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and what we have to sort of agree on, like before you get too far down, is you go, well, whatever's happening in the upper left, in the interior of the I, of the singular, manifests in every quadrant. There's nothing that exclusively happens in one part of the I, which is really
Mm-hmm.
the singular I, but then the collective I, the we, right? It unfolds in each of those
All
quadrants
quadrants, all at
at the
once.
same time, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you go, I, for example, so I think about you posted that picture in the group recently with the um, things on your head, the suckers. It was obviously some kind of brain.
Oh, the for the EEG. Yeah,
The EEG machine, right?
yeah,
So,
the
so
brain
we
scanner.
go,
Yeah.
so we go, okay, what's happening in the interior of the eye of the Brett while you're
Mm-hmm.
having that state experience? You're going into a meditative state or a visualization. You're changing your state, which has an
Mm-hmm.
effect on your mind, and so you might see things, feel things, and whatever, but then it also has an effect on the exterior.
Yes.
So which they're measuring with your brain waves, right?
Yeah.
So you go,
Yeah.
oh, actually the experience that he's having interior in his interior, we have hard physical um, effect because his brain is changing actually while
Mm-hmm.
he's doing that. Oh, and his body, his heart rate's going down and his body's cooling down or warming up depending on the state experience that we're having. But then also we go, well, that then can't just manifest in that area. It is then going to affect the lower left, which is the interior of the collective,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like the way that a group thinks or perceives
Mm-hmm.
is is actually affected by your experience, your internal experience has an effect on the group, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the way that then you behave as you move throughout your life and your interactions and um, it could it could be a smile or a wave or something even as subtle as that has an effect on how then a group of people are thinking, feeling, behaving, and then the way that they behave and the way that things happen in the exterior, the physical we. So
Mm-hmm.
a group or a business or an organization, right, becomes affected, right? So
Yes.
when we go actually that so that right there kind of comes to the big question of what we're talking about. It's like how does our spiritual life manifest? What's the real effect of it beyond, how does it then affect everything? Or like what are the tangible things, right? Which is kind of like, you know, sometimes I kind of go, it's to me that's the beginning. You know what I mean? Like that question is the beginning. And you know, I think back, I'll tell this story, and this was kind of like a aha moment for me on my sort of path, you know, like I'd sort of like practiced meditation for years, just on and off, casually, you know, you listen to tapes or you kind of learn a few techniques and you do them, and I think going back to what you said, it's like you sort of start with, well, what do I get out of this? What do I get from this? What am I getting, right? Because even after you have a great, you might have a great state experience that shifts your perspective for a while, or you have the whiz bang sort of moments, but then you're kind of like, you know, like you mentioned about going off and doing a retreat or doing a workshop, and then you kind of come back from it and you're like, well, geez, it's just me again. It's
Yeah.
I'm not fixed. I'm not you know, the magic has sort of faded away, and you come home and your dog's shit on the carpet and you're like, well, fuck this. Like, you know, you're not feeling very spiritual
How does
anymore,
this
right?
help me? Yeah.
Yeah, like what is this meant to be
How does it
doing,
help
right?
with cleaning up dog shit off the carpet? Yeah.
So, you know, and I think back to like, you know, when I first met my teacher, like my you know, I study with a teacher, you know, numerous times a week and practice in a group. And, you know, always for years looking for a proper teacher, for a proper, some structure around
Mm.
this, because you know what?
Mm.
I wanted to get the most out of it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That was my mindset. I wanted to get to the top of the mountain,
Yeah.
and I needed someone who had been there to show me how to get there. Right?
Yeah. I don't want to
And then,
waste my time on any other paths. Give me straight and narrow. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, just put it right in my veins. You know what I
That's
mean?
it.
I want to get. And you know, I remember the first day like I'd heard about this teacher that was teaching in our area in Byron. And because I got into a conversation about meditation with someone who came into the gym, into the academy, um, and we were discussing. He said, "Oh, actually, I was telling him about a book I was reading about a Buddhist teacher who had gone through like a fall from grace. He was a big teacher, became kind of famous in the early 2000s when, you know, like the everyone was jumping on the spirituality train, and Oprah had
Mm-hmm.
Thich Nhat Hanh on there, and you know what I mean. And he was a guy who kind of got a lot of fame, then had a fall from grace because he had a sexual um, some inappropriate sexual stuff with a student, right? Not an
Mm-hmm.
underage student, but a student that he was, you know, meant to be leading as a spiritual teacher. So, you
Mm-hmm.
know, had his great fall. And so we were discussing this book, and he said, oh, actually, there's a really great Zen teacher, like around the block from here. Like, you know, we meet on this day and this day. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. I'm going to go, I'm going to be there. And of course, on my way there, I'm having the thought of like licking my lips and rubbing my hands, going, well, this is it. Like I'm going to get,
I'm
right?
gonna get it.
I'm going to get the goods, right?
Yeah.
And it was interesting. So we came in, we sat, and we did a few periods of seated meditation, and then he did a Dharma talk. And this group had just come back from um, a week-long retreat,
Mm-hmm.
and um, so he's giving a talk, sort of, and it was kind of a dressing down, to a few of the people, not singling them out, but one of the things he said, and it kind of, I went, uh-huh. He went, I don't give a shit if you're sat there having some cosmic experience. Yeah. I don't care. I want you to realize that the compost bin needs taking out. Right.
Yeah.
And I kind of went, oh, okay. Wait a second. This isn't really about getting anything, right? This isn't about getting. This is about getting rid of our greed, right? Like our greed and our ignorance. And then like from that, pretty much from that day, like there was like I was hooked. Just didn't miss it. Haven't missed the talk since. And and there's probably been a good year where the talks were pretty much about how greedy we are, right? So it's always interesting for me when having these conversations where usually the start is like, well, what are we going to get out of this? You know what I mean? Because I go
Yeah.
back to that place of like, oh yeah, that actually what I need, what we should be doing is asking, how do we get out of the way? How do we get out of the way and then let the universe show us what's up and who
Yeah.
we really are, rather than us? We don't do it. We're not the ones that get enlightened, right? We get out of the way so that enlightenment reveals itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when it comes to our like, the stuff around manifestation and improving our golf swing or our bank balance or anything, you kind of go, well, that's just day one. That's just the easy stuff.
Party
That's this.
tricks.
Yeah, that's exactly. Those are party tricks.
Yeah.
That's actually where we go. That's not the great miracle. You
No.
know what I mean? That's just like that gets you in the door. You know what I mean? You think you turn up for that and you realize, oh, wait a second, there's a bigger issue here because what you will soon start realizing on the manifestation journey is you go, oh yeah, I can get that. I can get the dream job. I can get the whatever. But you know what? I'm still stuck with me, greedy,
Yeah.
old, ignorant me. I'm still
I'm,
here.
I can manifest all that, but at the end of the day, I'm still me. Yeah. I'm
You
still in the
know?
mind that I had before I started this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's almost like you want to like start there, light your firecrackers and watch them go bang, and then quickly let's move on, to and of course, we have the privilege of saying that because we live in a beautiful place and we have a lot to be thankful for and a lot to be grateful for. So,
Yeah.
hopefully what we soon do is like, figure out how we manifest for others, right? Like quickly we should be shifting away from our own, you know, desires, right? Because they actually it it's all that's all just more suffering, really. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't really get to the root of our like the human condition. So, I guess that's like a really long roundabout way of saying that like yeah, we can manifest anything, but the big question is you know, what do now that once we realize that oh we have freedom and we are freedom, what are we going to do with that? What do we do about it? How does that like um, unfold in other people's lives, right? Rather than what am I going to get out of this, right? Hopefully, what we get out of it is, a little bit more humble. We get softened, right? We get we get like space within our being to yeah to see nature and the sunset, and that becomes enough, like rather than what we think we want or what we think we
Yeah.
need. Really,
Yeah.
really what we get is the understanding that we actually don't need most of that. So that's, so when it comes to, yeah, the manifestation part, I go, manifest an open heart,
Mm.
softness, you know?
Yeah, I like, just to put it more in concrete terms, like I remember most people know when they see this that I've been following SpaceX and the rockets and the building of all that, and one of the interviews that Elon Musk had about what's the big rocket called? I can't even remember its name now. They're building it now, and the big super heavy, whatever it is, Dragon. And he said, they're saying, oh, how's it built? And he's talking about the structure and everything. And he said, well, what we actually discovered is we didn't need that part, and in engineering, the best part is no part. Because, and then, if you look at aeronautical engineering, and it's all about form follows function. So, I remember as a kid, I was looking at airplanes going, oh, that's a cool looking airplane. That's a cool, and I draw all these weird designs, not realizing that they would, and I'd show them to my uncle who was an aeronautical engineer, and he said, oh, well, that's a nice drawing, but that wouldn't work. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He said, well, that's unnecessary. You take the red pen to it. That's not needed, and that will get in the way, and at this high speed, that'll cause vibration and blah, blah, blah. And so, stripping away all these things allows you to, in that context, go faster and higher, with less
and
energy.
yeah, and that's really, it's funny that you said that because, one of the things that I kind of always think about like, when I think about the process of a spiritual practice, right?
Mm,
Really, essentially, what it is, it's more and more stripping away,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Strip more, take more off, take more off. It's almost like because I sometimes have this, like a vision in my mind of like the way we kind of go through our life. I feel like until we choose to go, this isn't kind of working out the way I thought, so I'm gonna explore this line of my development a little bit further. What we
mm,
kind of do is like I imagine us in like this little canoe, right? Like a little paddling through this great big ocean. And what we're kind of doing is we're coming across these different like and I kind of when we look at like the subtle level, right? To go back to like meditation and visualization on the very subtle level, but also on the gross level. And when I say gross, I mean not disgusting, but gross as in the
matter.
hard the hard matter, right?
Mm,
So what we kind of do in our process of development as we go through our lives is in our little canoe, we're gathering up and tying these bits onto our boat, right? Concepts, ideas, opinions, right? There's a great, my path is Zen. So I'll like usually refer to like some of these great like Zen masters who say things like, you know, to be enlightened is just to stop picking and choosing, right? It's like we pick up concepts, ideas, thoughts, and we hook them onto our boat, right? We tie them
mm,
on, and we do it in the physical sense as well. I need to get another car. I need to get another this. I need to have the latest such and such and the new that. And so between our concepts and our ideas, our opinions about other people, our projections on them and the world around us, our language that we use to label things, to make a concrete separation. I'm here, you're over there, I'm me, you're you, we're a solid thing in this universe. You know, we want to, it's part of our innate ego continuation project, right? Our plan to shore up some ground for ourself, right? Or the idea of the thing that we think is internal inside of us, that's there, that we go, okay, we got to make it solid. So with our concepts and our physical bits and everything, we end up all of a sudden trying to row through the big, deep, open ocean, but we have all of this crap like tied
towing
onto
behind
us.
us. Yeah.
So really, what the whole kind of like process, when I think about the process of manifestation or meditation, like, so it's really just a process of cutting, right? It's cutting off these things that we've attached to ourselves, that we're clinging to give us a sense of I-ness and one. I'm a one. I'm a one. I exist. You know. So I need this all with me to reaffirm that possibly deluded thought, right? That I'm a separate thing from the universe. That the universe is there and I'm a one that's in it, right? That I'm separate from you and the rest of it. When actually, as we cut away and cut away and cut all these bits off, we get glimpses that, oh, maybe things aren't quite the way that I had manifested them for myself. Maybe what I've manifested, maybe the best thing I could do is manifest some space for the universe to come this way.
Yeah.
And show me, right?
Yes.
There's an old saying that if you to go forth and find enlightenment is delusion, right? To let the 10,000 things, so everything, come forward and show you is that's enlightenment, right? Is to realize, oh, the space that I thought was there between me and you and me and the rest of the universe isn't really there. If we look close enough, you know, and this is the same stuff that the quantum physicists will show, is that there isn't a place that we're not connected, right? So yeah, on that topic of manifestation, it's like, yeah, manifest some 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 a hollowness or something, you know, to let the
So it's
rest
like
in.
the question is not how do you connect your spirituality to tangible reality, because it already is. It's how do you become aware that it is, and what's interrupting that flow from thought to instant manifestation reality, or awareness that it's already there.
Yeah.
So that
Like
was, sorry, just last one more little bit is that when, you know, the group of people in these workshops, there was a group within the group, right? So you've got 1,500 people at this event or whatever it is, and some people would repeat and they would keep coming back. And over, you know, the course of a year, there was a group of people that would continually come back, but they weren't just coming back for the social aspect, they were coming back to practice. And what the collective realization was is that, and some people had this, you know, on their first time to an event as well, they just hit the nail on the head with awareness, is that they said, you know, am I actually manifesting this, or am I just finally aware that it was already there the whole time and I couldn't see it because it was outside of my perception because of the model of the mind that I had? And so a lot of the practice was just about reorganizing your internal representation systems so you could perceive what was already there in the quantum field of infinite potentials.
Yeah, so 100%. So my teacher, I would say, like, someday if I have to sum up like his, so I think like every kind of Dharma teacher, like the spiritual teacher, they sort of have like, they've got their thing that they're trying to get across, like in this particular lifetime. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because obviously the vast amount of knowledge and teachings and things that are out there that that we can all benefit from as a species and beyond. His big one is kind of around what you're discussing there, which is like he calls it the Eden myth. Okay, which is the great myth that has been perpetuated in every culture in a slightly different way, which is that we're not already always connected, right? That we've been kicked out of the garden. So the Eden story in Judeo-Christian and schools is that we were in this great beautiful place, this garden, and we were all connected and everything was fantastic, and then we were bad boys and girls and we've been kicked out, and now there's something we need to do to get
admitted back in,
reunited, to get reconnected. And that could be reconnected to God or reconnected to the source if you live in Mullumbimby, or it's their own version of that lie, of that story, right? That there's something that we need to do to get back there. And if you go through, especially in our area, all you got to do is sit in the coffee shop and overhear a conversation, and essentially everybody's having the same conversation slightly differently, just saying, oh, so what is it you're doing today to get reconnected? How's your reconnection process going? Well, I read this book and it is helping with my getting reconnected, and I am doing coffee enemas now because that's helping me get reconnected, or I've got this particular teaching or this practice that I'm doing to get connected again, right? To get back to heaven, to get back to the source. When real, like, are we, is this not communion? Are we not already in communion, right? And what we can't do, though, is just agree with that fact, right? The fact that we already are always connected. There's nothing but communion, wall to wall, from one side of the universe to the other. But what we, I guess, want, right, is to get, and what's worthwhile, what is probably a worthwhile pursuit, is to purge the idea that we're not, right? So we can't like just hear that we are and go, oh, okay, cool, oh great, I'm connected.
I'm good now.
I'm good. I heard it. I got it, right? Unless I guess you're some super, maybe you're like karma and everything is lined up perfectly and you just need to hear that just the once, and boom, it goes in, and all of a sudden you become Mother Teresa and you go out and you spend all your time serving, right? But most of us aren't that lucky, so that's when our manifestation practices or our visualization practices and our meditation practices come in to serve that purpose, to slow us down, to allow us to closer perceive the moment, right? The eternal moment that we're in, right? That we are. So it's like
to surrender to it.
and to recognize, to recognize it, right? So any practice or any visualization or meditation or any of that should simply be not to try and do it or get it or be it. It's just actually to get out of the way and let the universe realize that you're just the universe universing, right? So like when I think back to your thing about the about manifesting the fox stuff, it's like, well, part of it is the putting attention on that, right? So as much as like, do we believe in magic that you think about one and it turns up? Well, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that can happen in the quantum field. But what I know is probably easier to prove is that when we put our attention on something, then we're going to notice it when it happens, right? So when we start to talk about like, okay, how does this stuff then seep into the rest of our life, right? And kind of like on a very like practical sense, like the way I would look at it is go, okay, so if we're made up of 100, we're made up of 1,000,000 lines of intelligences, right? I'm a concert pianist. I'm just not a very good one, right? My level of development in that particular area is zilch, right? But if I look at jiu-jitsu or something else, well, I'm more developed in that particular area, right? So now there are some kind of big ones, our health, our spiritual understanding, our ability to show up in the world and create a a life for ourselves and put money in the bank so you can put food in your belly and your family's and your neighbor's belly, and you know what I mean, all of these different aspects sit close to each other because they're sort of our core parts of who we are and how we spend our time in the 24 hours of our day, right? So what we'll start to see is that when we do our manifestations and our visualizations on that interior part of the eye, because that's sort of the quadrant we're working with when we're doing that, is that, oh, wait a second, all of a sudden my physical fitness has improved as well, because the concentration and my ability to focus on to keep looking at one spot, right, for long enough, it starts to bleed into the other areas, and they start to have an effect on an increase in other areas, right? So it's like, how does that stuff that's some of the kind of like tangible that's our rewards, right? Is how it then bleeds throughout all the other bits and pieces that we do, and we're not meditating or visualizing or manifesting, right? So
it's like these techniques are devices and tools, like you said, to slow you down, to reconnect you, to recognize. What'd you say? Recognize?
Recognize, right?
Recognize or remind.
Recognize, recognize. So there's
and so when it puts you back into this mode, like when you're doing it naturally, when you can focus on a particular thing for long enough, like you were saying, hold the image, but allow the universe to universe. What is that? And I remember yesterday we were talking about it and talking about different states, different states of being, everything. I once heard that everything that happens in your life, or you create in your life, or whatever, a skill, learning a skill, producing a result, it's all state dependent. And so one thing I found is that some states help you recognize potentials in the field and collapse them, or notice them already created in your reality, and others don't. Others keep you like a veil from that. And so one of the things you mentioned, we were talking about having the brain scanner on, is that they talked about different brain states, brainwave states, and beta or high beta is a survival state. It's very good when you're assessing the external world for threats in the quadrant, and you're trying to recognize whether you should defend yourself against saber-toothed tiger and run away, or fight, your marauding neighbor or whatever. But it's not great for
recognizing the interconnected freedoms. It's already there.
Exactly. So for that state, you need to at least be in an alpha state or a theta state consciously. But most people on the bell curve, they drop out of consciousness after alpha. They go into theta, they're in a dream state, and they fall asleep, literally fall asleep. This is what rapid eye movement, REM sleep is. People are in a theta state. But through meditation, and this is probably something, it was one of the lines in The Matrix where he meets the Oracle, and she says, I know you're not sleeping, we'll get to that. And then it was never talked about again. It's because the guy's dreaming while he's awake, and when you start to dream while you're awake, all sorts of different things are available to you. The rules of physical reality slip into a different boundary containment, where a lot more is possible, because you're outside of that small mindset of survival. You're now into a different mindset altogether, which is more in line with your connectedness to everything that is. And so from there, then you have also delta, and most people are in deep sleep. They're completely unconscious in delta. But if you can maintain your awareness in delta and carry thought into there, then the universe is even faster, with more energy and more current and more speed and less time. And then if you can do that in gamma, then that's super genius magic land. That's when things
get really weird.
That's when you're not sure if you're actually dreaming or awake, or if it, did that actually just pop into existence while I wasn't looking, or was it always there and I didn't notice it? And reality becomes really dreamy and surreal. People say, it's so surreal. I almost can't believe this is happening, because it's outside the belief system now.
Yeah, because it stops being, the actual experience of being isn't just like ones and zeros. I'm a one and you're a one, and that's where things, the duality sort of dissipates, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it become, it's more like a dream. The reality can be more like a dream than a dream.
Yeah.
It's we spend so much time stopping the mind on things, right, and making them the thingness of things, right? With our language, with our labeling, and it's great to get through the day and go get your groceries and get to work on time and make sure you're at the meeting and then feed the baby and the kids and everything else. But it's like we also need to, or we don't need to do anything, but it might be good to take advantage of your time as a human being on the earth to spend some time hanging out in that other state and seeing if the process of verification, what where you kind of land with that,
Yeah.
and do you start to agree with some of the crazy statements that the sages and mystics of the ancient time had said? It was funny. I was out having walking the dog with my neighbor here the other day. That's our lockdown excuse, walk the dogs and have a chat. And we were talking, and he's a very analytical, like, thinker, and like talks about like the scientific method, right? And just one of the things I always like to think about in these conversations about like meditation or manifestation is that you go, well, the same three strands of deep science work for what we're discussing as well, right? So the same, because one of the things we were saying to him was because he's like, oh, I like science because you can prove it, right? But part of science is that they go, I mean, science is I take the microscope and I look through it, right? And I have an experience by taking an instrument, doing the test, looking through it, and I say, well, from here it looks like the cell has a nucleus, and this is what I'm seeing. But what do you think, right? And you go, well, let me take the microscope and I'll look through it and I'll see what I see, and then together we come up with the best story we can that makes the most sense with the information we have by following that scientific process, right? Yeah. Take the thing, look through it, come up with a conclusion. We never really conclude anything, right? It's here's our best story that we have about what's going on. Yeah. So far. What do you think? Yeah, it looks pretty good to me. Yep, we can kind of agree on this. And by the way, you don't get to be involved in the discussion or the story about what's happening unless you do the same, right? We don't go and ask the postman then, well, do cells have a nucleus? And and he's like, well, of course they don't. That's crazy. But if we bring him in on the process, and he goes, geez, actually, you're right. I'm verifying what you've told me, right? That this is the case, and that's the best story we have about what's happening, so far. And you go, well, we can do the same with everything we're discussing here, because the process of sitting and doing a visualization, or sitting in a meditative state, right? You go, well, we believe that the world's not quite as solid as we think it is, right? With our eyes that we just normally use to perceive, that everything looks solid, and I'm here and you're over there, and this glass is separate, and it's just it's all separateness all throughout the universe. And we go, well, actually, we think that maybe it's not quite that way, and it is a bit of more of a dreamier, strange place where everything is completely interconnected and where everything relies on each other, and it's all kind of unfolding as one big thing. And if you want to disagree, okay, sure, but you can just go disagree over there, but you can't actually be in on the conversation because you haven't looked through the microscope. So go look through the microscope, do it for, there's the classic thing. Go sit in your cave for 20
Mm-hmm.
years, sit and look at the wall, come out in 20 years, and tell me that this isn't true. You know what I mean? Then tell me. Then come
Mm-hmm.
with your, you know, great proclamation of what the heck it is that's going on here. Because actually, the longer you do it, the more sure of anything that you get. You go, well, I actually know a lot less than I did before, because it's even less certain than I thought it was. It just becomes less and less certain, and then that's when like the magic is revealed to us, right? Then that's when we go back to the wonder of being a whatever the heck this is, and less thingy. That's a thing, and that's a thing, and you're over there, and I'm over here, and it's all separate, So it's a it's a fascinating wormhole to start to go down.
Yeah, it is fascinating when you come back all the way back to the start of the conversation, that everything we're experiencing is happening inside the closed box here. We don't actually know what's happening outside, because all these perceived input sensors are interpreting for the brain, or the brain's interpreting what it's perceiving. And we don't actually know what's outside, if there's anything outside, if there is an outside.
Well, yeah, exactly, right? You go like, and I don't necessarily think of it as like in here. I go, that's where the physical receptor is stored, but the mind is a great open sky, like but all I ever get is my mind as a human being. I don't get to ever truly experience you. I experience my mind experiencing you, right? So it's like, which kind of brings me to like, another, like we always do, like, we, I think, have the nature of wanting to like land on somewhere and shore up like with some certainty, like, an answer as well, right? It's like the the answer that we're always going to, that you eventually get to if you ask the question long enough, is that you ain't never, it's a great mystery. We never get to know. We never get to truly go, because we're, you know, I use my analogy of like, we're like the ants trying to figure out like the internet, right? We don't have we're never going to get it, right? So spend some time just being in awe of it all, right? In between, walking the dog and paying taxes and, all the things that we have to do to have our, to get breaks of wonder and awesomeness, right? But let's hang out in those states long enough, because there's a I forget who says it, but we talk about these states, and maybe we could even frame this, like make kind of a succinct, like where you were discussing the different sort of states, and we can agree, okay, in future discussions we can refer back to generally the waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, right? Yep. Like just to kind of simplify it and not get too scientific, we generally have waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, and altered states, right? Altered states that can come from, doing a crazy breath meditation, or and they would take into that, whether, I don't know what exact brain states those are, but to simplify, waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and altered states, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have all these states of being. That's one aspect of what's going on here, right?
Mm.
Those states all unfold within our kind of quadrants that we discussed as well. Interior of the self, the exterior, my brain state affects my physical state, and then the collective. But then the other part is we actually have stages, right? That we start to develop through. So when we go back to what's the name of our conversation? It's spirituality
Connecting with tangible reality.
Okay, tangible reality. Here's a tangible reality. Human beings go through stages of development,
Mm-hmm.
right? We develop through stages, right? There's hundreds of different models of what that kind of looks like, and how many, I always think of it as like a meter stick, like the meter stick of evolution. Well, you could slice it up however many times you want, and you can use different types of measurement, whether you say it's a centimeter or a millimeter or an inch or a mile, right? But we as a whole, our whole being develops through these different stages. And one of the really beneficial things about states and state training, so if we decide to hang out
Mm-hmm.
in a state long enough, well, that will affect our stage. So eventually, what was a glimpse of something or a flash in the pan or a little experience, the more we spend there, the more time we spend there, the more likely we are to move into a different stage of development, right? So there's a saying that like states are free, stages are earned, right? I
I
can
like
I can
that.
take I'm in a different state of being straight away to create sustained growth in our development in these areas of, we're talking about spirituality. Well, I got to earn that. I got to spend enough time in those states that becomes a bit more. Uh, it becomes a higher view. To our view is elevated, and we can kind of get more comfortable there. We don't have to go back and start at the bottom every time, you know? So those
Mm-hmm.
that like stayed, and I had an interesting conversation with my same mate, my neighbor that I was walking the dog with, because he has a new baby. He's like 7 months old or something. And we were talking about stages of development and how there's this really fascinating um, you know where we kind of go with this, and the big discussion is one of the kind of big things about it and how all this manifests in our reality. One of the true ways that manifests is we get to take on more perspective. We become, we get a greater capacity to take more perspectives, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the greater
Yep.
and greater that expansion in our perspectives is, that's when you aren't hearing the bird song, you are the bird song, and that
Mm.
sounds crazy. It sounds a bit like bizarre when you think about it, but it's like that's what we're trying to do, is have the ability to take more and more and more perspectives. The problems that we face in the world, what's happening in Afghanistan today, is lack of perspective taking,
Yeah.
right? It's hard for people to walk a mile in someone else's shoes and make their decisions based on having had that experience of seeing the world the way they see it. So what we get to do in these in our spirituality, and how it truly manifests in the real world, is I get to feel more. I get to take on more perspectives. I hurt more. I actually get to hurt more. Sounds funny saying it, but I get more pain because I can
I can
see
perceive it.
things the way that you're seeing it, and it hurts. It probably bothers us less. We're probably less bothered by it, and it isn't maybe as stressful as it was when our perspective was smaller, but it hurts more, right?
Yeah.
So like hurts more, bothers us less, you know? So like, hey, sign up for a spiritual development. You will hurt like hell. No, but like where I'm kind of going with that though is also that, like, you know, that makes for a richer experience, right?
Yeah,
To be able
definitely.
to be able to take on more perspective and because it's like, you know, one of the things that we kind of should agree on as well before we go, because we're going to go down a lot of different, in not in this discussion but in many discussions, we're going to explore all these different parts of what makes up humans, and how do we, okay, we know we have these different lines of development. How do we actually, you know, what's our path to grow as an entrepreneur or as a father, as a business coach, whatever we do, you know? But so like one of the things that, like, you know, we have to get clear on is that it is the nature, this sounds funny, but the nature of the universe, right? The nature of the universe is it's made up of holons. Do you know what I mean when I say that? That it's made up of holons? Like it's all made up of parts, of greater parts, right?
Holographic. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if
It's
holographic's the
like
way I'm.
a network, like the internet is, you know, millions of computers connected to each other, sharing information.
Sure, but almost simpler than that. Like where the fact that, like, you know, it's very much seems that the universe is made up of things that are both a whole and a
And the
part
part.
at the
Mm.
same time, right? So you
Yeah.
go
The part is in the whole and the whole is in the part.
atoms, but like so we've got atoms make up cells, make up organisms, right? So this is the nature of how our, you know, a letter makes up a word, makes up a sentence, makes up a paragraph, makes up a book, right? So like
Yeah.
the way
Yeah.
that our universe tends to unfold is in that way. We're a planet in a solar system, in a galaxy, in a megaverse, you know what I mean? It's like this
Mm-hmm.
is sort of like the nature of how we unfold as well, right? As people. So it's like, you know, the way that our spirituality manifests in our life tangibly is that our perspective, we can perceive more of that unfolding, right? We go from, like, when we're a kid, when we're a baby, to go back to my mate's baby, where we only have our perspective. We haven't yet developed to a point where we can take on perspective of mom. She's just there to feed me, you know what I mean? So I remember like having this conversation with my sister when I forget how old her daughter was, but you do this old experiment where if you take you know, you take like a ball, right? And it's red on one side and it's blue on the other, right? And you show it to like the baby, or not, you know, like a 3-year old. And you go, what color is this? Right? And they say, well, it's blue. And what color is that? Well, that's red. What color are you seeing right now? Blue. Well, what color am I seeing? Blue. Wait a second, what color is that? Well, that's red. Okay. And what color is that? That's blue. So what color do you see? Blue. And what am I seeing? Blue. They've not developed, they literally haven't developed to the point where they can cognize that your perspective is different, even though they saw it just a second ago. It's like peekaboo. You've disappeared. The perspective that they have the ability to take is taken away from them. But naturally, they develop further and they can take on the perspective of another, right? And then eventually, if we're, not psychopaths, we can take on the perspective of someone who's outside. We generally go from me, I care about me because I have my perspective. Well, then I grow to the point where I can care about my family as well, my group, my tribe, right? And as the holons get bigger, we go, well, now I care about my whole neighborhood, and I care about my state, and I care about my country. And that's where, unfortunately, a lot of people kind of end.
They stop there.
My country. Yep. I'm a insert country here. And what's happening to them peoples over there doesn't matter to me, because it's, they've only taken their perspective to that point. So when I think about how spirituality truly manifests in the real solid world, get softer. Having yourself in a state where you're able to perceive the universe universing and be that and not separate from it, and a greater perspective with more care for more sentient beings, and then beyond our earth and to the beings and beings and beings that go beyond and beyond and beyond. So yeah, I go, geez, it's pretty important stuff. You know what I mean? It's not just woo. It's not just the woo woo, like, oh, I do it to, feel good and, align my chakras and that's all part of it and that. But we go, this is how great nations get built. This is how great businesses get built, right? It's because, something becomes bigger than us. You know what I mean? The things that exist for a reason that are beyond our own wants, needs, and desires generally are great things. So it's like, how do people in our community here want, like, what does that mean to them and their freedom, right? We've all got the freedom to like, once we have an experience of realizing this and recognizing it, that we have this freedom, then it's kind of like, oh shit, okay, well, what do we do with ourselves now? We get that, we get excited for life and possibilities, and it becomes, we let all the secretarial work that's been going on in here for so long. We fire the secretary, right? And we start to go, let's get on with, making the world unfold in a hopefully better way, Anyhow, sorry that I kind of just went on a rant there, but how I
No,
do.
that was great. That was great. It was right on the money. One of the experience I remember I was in Hanover, and I was doing some independent tests on the EEG with the neurofeedback guys over there, and I'd had some pretty out there experiences, and met some people that had lots of experiences too. So it was becoming more and more common, and manifesting things in that personal sphere, inner and outer, was happening more and more often and very normal. It was like commonplace. Other people outside the group, for example, looking in, were going, wow, that's amazing. But it was becoming more and more normalized and equalized for me and my perspective. But one of the things that really came back was that it's like, okay, I've got this, I know this, I'm unfolding this process and exploring it and developing it further to whatever capacity and degree. But it's very clear that not many other people have this perspective or capacity for the perspective. And it's like, well, I kind of want to live in a world where everybody has that ability, or is at least making their way towards it, you know. And because when you're in a group of people that are doing that, they're all practicing that, you know, you can stay in those moments, those states longer and easier, and you all pull each other up and help remind each other all the time. It's like you don't even have to do anything, you just have to see the person's face, you know, you share an experience, you listen to their story, and boom, you're back in there. And if this was happening on a mass scale, then, you know, to me, it was like, that's the kind of world I want to live in. I don't want to have to go to a workshop to experience it. I want it everywhere, around me, all the time.
Yeah, well, and it's funny though, because you kind of you know, you look at where we do need the balance between you know, I always think about Tibetan Buddhists, right? And I go, geez, you know, like they, like as a group, I mean, you couldn't get much more spiritually developed, okay, than that group had as a community of people in a place and time and a culture. But you know, they didn't get too far beyond yak butter as far as like technology goes.
Buttered tea.
You know what I mean? Because because they were so like, you know, they had gone, no, this is what we're so you know, completely one-minded and focused on, right? And you go,
Yeah,
we need,
they were in the inner quadrants only,
yeah,
not many, not much of them
exactly.
external.
You go, we need that. We needed, you know, we all stand on the shoulders of giants, right? That's like we get the benefit of everything that everyone's done before. So, where we're at now, you know, and what we have the ability to do today, now, our community is to go, well, waking up is one thing. When I say waking up, I mean waking up to that fact that the Eden myth is bullshit and that we are always already connected. You know, growing up though is another thing, right? Which has also been ignored by a lot of these like spiritual teachers, for example, through time. This is when you hear these stories about these crazy, wise, like, you know, completely enlightened beings, but then they went and did a bunch of weird sexual stuff with their followers, you know, and you go, well, yeah, because they hadn't grown up. They hadn't got out of their level of development to a point where they're like, oh yeah, you're as much as we're completely connected, right? There's a part of you that's autonomous that deserves to not have me, you know, take advantage of you in that way. So they hadn't grown up, right? And the other thing, and this is one thing that we could go way, like we won't even get into it now, but I know that it's an area of interest for you as well, but is like the shadow work, right? Our shadows,
Yeah.
the parts of us that we don't know, we don't know what we don't know, right? Parts of us that we ignore or that are unhealthy bits and they manifest, and you know, where we, you know, when we're so annoyed by our cousin Janice because she's just always doing that thing that's probably the thing that we need to be focused on in our own self that needs a bit of cleaning up. So it's like we can wake up. We have in this lifetime, we have the opportunity to wake up, grow up, clean up, right? With our shadow work, and then show up. And then show up with all of that in the world and do really amazing, great things. Start great companies. Be a better family. Whatever it is that we're doing, how we show up in the world changes when we have a, like a holistic, like a full, like I'm looking at your design there. When we're kind of when we look at the full moon, when we look at all aspects of like ourselves, and when I say ourselves, I mean us, but the group as well. When we have when we have an understanding and a foundation of knowledge, right, that we use to consciously alter all of those different parts of us, are waking. It's like we should all have, sorry, I take back should. We could all have a waking up plan, a growing up plan, a showing up plan, a cleaning up plan, and a showing up plan, right? That becomes our life's practice, right? That's that our life becomes our practice, right? So when I think about like, how our spirituality shows up really and manifests in the world, I go, it's it's kind of all of it, right? It's like it's our whole thing unfolding consciously. We have the ability to be conscious about it now. You know what I mean? That's the best part about being a human. And there's lots of stuff we can't control. There's all kinds of stuff out of our control that's in those exterior quadrants. The exterior of the collective can do all kinds of nasty, gnarly stuff to us, but we also, with an understanding and a holistic sort of a plan and a kind of like a strategy, or what I should say is an orientation. When we've reoriented ourselves in a way, and we're going through our practice, our multiple practices, our how we practice our financially, physically, psychologically, it's like it's like, for example, lots of people go and spend years like in seated meditation, and you're like, you know what, mate, actually you probably just need to go see a therapist for like a week. You know what I mean? Like that might be what you actually need. You know what I mean? Right? Because part of us, we don't. It's like you can do all the yoga in the world you want, girl, but it ain't gonna get rid of like why you hate dad so much. You know what I mean? It's like, but we have to be able to look at all that stuff as like a whole map, right, of our life, and go, oh shit, I'm very developed in this particular area, but over here, shit, I'm lacking. And that's why I'm some people are feeling completely at one, and they're fully in touch with the universe, and they can't keep a job or they're broke. You know what I mean? So we go, let's try and get a little, the way I kind of visualize it is like those old school stereos where you have like all the different like, like equalizer. So you go like, honey, yeah, I get it. You're seeing fairies, and a bodhisattva came down and sat on your shoulder and whatever, but also adjust those levels in these different parts of our being, but we have to know about them, and we have to have some strategies, practices, commu- community group of people to lean on. Like, man, one of the hardest parts from this whole thing that all of us have been experiencing since COVID started is like, wow, we've all really realized how much we rely on, hopefully we realize how much we rely on all the other people around us, right? We're not self-made. That's the biggest joke ever, you know? We're not sovereign. Everybody wants to be sovereign. You're not. You're completely reliant on everyone else, right? So if that's a scary thought for you, too bad, because you know we do need each other. We need to be connected. We need communities. We need good communities of people who are on, you know, it doesn't have to be the same path, but oriented in the same direction. So put that in your pipe and smoke it.
And that concludes our show for this evening.
Yeah. Don't know. Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
your answer. You know me.
I agree. You know, like I remember one of the things I used to keep hearing from people. It became like a one-upmanship in the community, these spiritual communities, where this is years ago when, you know, people thought it was all about meditations. And so they'd come up and like, are you doing your daily meditation? And like, tisk, tisk, if you hadn't done it. And it's like, hang on, like, the meditation is a tool, a device, a practice to get you to focus on the state you're in, creating what you want, whatever it is. And like, when does that stop? Is it only, you only do that 1 hour a day? Is that how it works? No, you're doing this all the time. You know, you're slipping in and out of states all the time. Your life could be a meditation if you have the right attitude towards it, approach to it, orientation to it. And so then the techniques and the tools and all the practices help you sharpen and bring more awareness to those, like you said, those shadow areas, you know, where maybe you're not tooled up in or experienced in or whatever. And so, yeah, you want to be more rounded and more whole. So you're not focusing on just one area and that's what you're good at. And you stay in there. Like, you know, you see this in the martial arts circles, you know, the Aikido guy who's got the black skirt, you know, he's the black belt with the skirt. And you know, he's earned that and took years to get it. And he's just so focused on that. And then when someone comes from another style like jiu-jitsu or whatever and shows him something outside his perspective, there's an opportunity to go, okay, well, this is something I can learn to learn martial arts as a whole and become a more rounded martial artist. Or I can just be good at Aikido as the example and hang on to the skirt.
Yeah.
You know? And then because in that environment, I'm the master.
He's a master. Yeah.
Master.
Yeah. Well, you know, really what, you know, what we should be, any kind of like relationship, right, is especially if there's someone that's a teacher or a master, it should be like a two-way street, you know, like the and so because really what you're doing is, in any kind of, you know, scenario like that, is, well, like, you have an opportunity to knit eyebrows, right, with a student. That then should be a, you know, the flow back and forth between student and teacher, right? And which is what we all are with each other, right? We're all the student and the teacher, right? In all of our interactions, right, with each other. So yeah, that made me think about when you were saying about the, are you doing your meditations like that, like from the sort of circle you were in? Like my teacher, he always tells a story about, him being on a bus. He was in the city and he was with another monk, and they're on the bus, and so his friend, he got up on the bus seat, like sat right up on the seat, had his legs in full lotus position, and he was sat in like, you know zazen, just completely, in his zone. And there's people getting on the, like, old woman, like getting on the bus, and then the bus is full at this point, and she's stood there like holding on to the railing, and he's like going like fucking just embarrassed. The two of them
Mm,
there in monk's robes on a bus, and this and is just sat there, and he gets off the bus, and he starts saying to him like, oh yeah, I was in full such and such, samadhi, da da da. And he's just like, you're a total asshole, man. Like,
you didn't notice the old lady
what
there
are
that
you
needs a
doing?
seat?
Like, you've missed the whole point, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
So, yeah, it's like all of this stuff is, yeah, that kind of one-upmanship is, I mean, I go, that's we're beyond that now, right? We
yeah.
now we now live in a time and a place, luckily enough, that we can learn from all of these different aspects, put them all to we have all of the knowledge of everyone that's come before us, and pop it onto a table, and we can look at the whole thing and go,
Yeah,
okay,
and
we have
tinker and play with it and develop it and try it on. I remember being, later that day, in that time I was telling you about. You know, how you have breaks during these workshops, and people go out and they have their meals and you chat and whatever, and that's when they go, are you doing your daily meditations, and however that conversation ended is irrelevant, but we'd all come back in to sit down and be like, all right, everyone take your seats, and we're going to get ready to do the next part of the
workshop.
workshop, whether it's a lecture or a meditation or an exercise or whatever. So everyone's getting into their mode to get ready. And this guy walks in and he's just like, right? He's in it. And he's not even in his seat yet, right? And people in the group are, walking up, and this woman walks up and hugs him, and she's just giggling like, I can feel whatever he's in right now. It's like
Yeah,
he's not even there, right? He's somewhere else, but his body's here experiencing wherever he is, right? And then they're all taking turns hugging this guy and just like soaking up the vibe. And he's just like, oh, not even present in his body, but having an effect, And it's like,
yeah,
so you don't need to be meditating if you're already there. If you're already
yeah.
experiencing it, that's the point. The meditation is to get you there, for example, if that's what you're focusing on. So
That
yeah, it was
reminds
just
me,
funny.
yeah, and you know what? And even just on a totally like even way more practical like level, because that's obviously sounds like someone that's having like a real experience, and of course there's stuff to be learned from when someone's in that state, because we can perceive something or get like the perfume of
Mm,
that experience that can, have an effect on us. But even on a like on a way more practical level, because not everybody that takes up a spiritual practice, or that starts to want to maybe be softer and open their heart more is going to have these like, oh, like,
Mm.
you know, their constitution just might not result in
Might
that,
not
right?
need it. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but the effect that we can actually have is you know, like there's another story that my teacher always, not always, but he's referred to me a couple times. This is back in the, whether it be the 70s or 80s, and he's on this retreat with, you know, some heavy hitters at the time. There's the teacher during the retreat was Bubba Free John, if you know who that is. He goes by a bunch of different names, but you know, big spiritual like teacher, like in the 80s or whatever. And like Ram Dass is there, and you know, there's these heavy hitters, and there's a group of them together, and they go, well, the teacher is staying in this like separate room, and they go, well, go in and ask him like how to get enlightened, you know? So like they all like sort of like vote for one guy to go in, and it's like,
Push him through the door.
oh yeah, yeah, exactly. And so he's like, so how do you get enlightened? And he said, help people. And you know, he comes back and says, fuck, he said help people, you know? Like, what the fuck? And they're like, oh, you know, I thought he was being twee, right? And sort of go like, okay, we got to give him like a more specific question, right? That was too broad, right? So okay. How do we raise Kundalini energy? Go in and ask him, how do we raise Kundalini energy? So they go in and, you know, how do we raise Kundalini? He says, feed people, right? And they come back and he says, he fucking said feed people. And they're just like, and they're going like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, it's going to be like this then. You know what I mean? Like thinking he's trying to be this clever, but it's like, whoa. No. That's the whole picture there. Like you want to skip past the the meat, the potatoes, the dessert, and everything, and move straight to what you think is the thing that isn't. You know what I mean? It's like this is it. He gave you the whole enchilada right in the beginning, but we don't want to see it. We don't want to think that it's, you know, we want to you know know the magical, click your fingers like this and do, and all that stuff's great, you know, having techniques and everything, but we go, actually our spiritual lives are more simpler and more practical than that. It's like smile at the guy at the shop, you know, carry someone's groceries. You know what I mean? It's like it sounds silly saying it. It's a bit like, oh yeah, right. But it's like, no, that's actually like, you know, the more of that stuff we do, the more we cultivate our own beings in a way that we make ourselves then accident prone to be shown the, you know what I mean? It's like this guy that's having this experience of the like, whoa, okay, sure, maybe it was that state exercise that put him there, but I'm telling you, if he's a real jerk off and is like, you know, a total, you know, waxes kids and everything else, like he's going to be a lot less likely to have that result. You know what I mean? To have that state experience. So we always got to like,
Yeah, and
you know,
for
have
the record, like he was just this quiet, unassuming, really gentle guy that was very polite to everyone and just a nice person,
yeah,
and not, you know, not someone that you'd really think would you wouldn't expect him to have that experience. But like you said, it was probably a culmination and adding up of all his practices and all his actions and thoughts and words and deeds in life that
yeah,
prepared him. So when he got into a room where the energy's just that little bit higher, it just tipped over the edge. He didn't need anything else. He's already there.
Fascinating. Well, maybe someday when the world permits it around here, we can have a bunch of people in a room together and share. And I look forward to that day again. Lockdown's okay, but it will be nice to have groups of people together again, hugging.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people, went to these events just for that moment at the end. It's like, all right, embrace the person next to you.
Yeah.
And share that feeling. Yeah.
So what else, bro? Anything else you think we need to touch on tonight, or should we? We ran I definitely ranted for just what time is it anyway?
I feel pretty satisfied for tonight,
Yeah.
I mean,
I feel bad for the poor people that gotta listen to me. Think about my poor wife. She has to get these rants just all the time.
He's talking about that again.
Fucking gratefulness. Shut up.
I've had it up to here with gratitude.
I don't think we actually didn't. We didn't even really touch on that. That's a whole, there's hours we could go on that one,
Oh yeah, look, I think like we chatted the other day, it really is endless. And, I think not having a bias as to what you want to get out of it, what you want to learn, as we said earlier. I mean, if we take the metaphor of the internet, a lot of people get in, they go, I want to learn about this. I want to get that out of it. I want to, like we touched on Bitcoin. I want to learn how to invest in Bitcoin. It's like, okay, well, that's cool. Like if that's that's a direction, but everything there's so much learning you can get along the way that when you finally get to invest in Bitcoin, for example, you'll know how to build a website, you'll know about social media marketing, you'll know about, creating your own content, you know about video editing, you know about all these skills, that you get along the way. That's, I think, what was it said? It's not what you, I don't want to mess this up because it was really good, but basically it was something like, it's not where the direction, it's not the goal, it's who you become in the process of achieving that goal. That should be the focus. And the reality is you don't know who you're going to be when you're there. You have an idea, you have a sense of feeling of what it might be like, but who you're becoming is really what you're in it for, or underneath it all. So it's exciting because,
love it.
Yeah, when you get there, you'll be more of who you are, but it won't be what you expect, and it'll be a good thing too.
That's well said. Well said. Just more of who you are, and not anything like you imagined. Right? That's sort of that's sort of what our spiritual lives are. It's like, oh, I imagine it's going to be like this after that, and then you go, oh no, there's definitely moments of where you're shaken to the core, but then you definitely go, yeah, it's not that. My greatest imagination of what I thought I was going towards actually doesn't even describe it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so look,
just to touch on what you said there, because ties in back to earlier what we touched on. And I know there's a few people in the group that are in that stage at the moment where they're getting shaken up, and their capacity to feel is increasing probably beyond what they thought they could handle. And at first, obviously, all the negative, let's say, dark aspects of those emotions surface first, and they're having to deal with all that. And they're like, I thought this was a spiritual thing, where I was going to feel bliss and gratitude for life and connectedness to everything. And it's like, one thing I wanted to sort of point out is that when you're moving up into these higher states, like you mentioned, you move from a duality to a unity, and you realize that it's just energy, and there's different sides of the seesaw here, and maybe your focus is in here, but you actually have access to the whole spectrum of that energy band. And so once you've experienced and you've sort of adjusted to the level over here on that hard to feel sort of side, you automatically by default have access to capacity to feel the opposite of that, which may be bliss and love and gratitude. And so your circle starts to expand.
Well, this for me, like this is a huge reason why I'm a believer in having a teacher, having a teacher, and fall, I think that there's so much, what I was doing for years was I was at the buffet of spirituality, just going, well, I'm going to get me a little some of that, and I'm going to find a little bit of this and have that little practice there and do this. And you're kind of going you're one of these people that's walking away from the buffet with 3 plates and you got everything piled on, right? Where it took me, finding my teacher in Zen and understanding our lineage, our what our school is about and what we're trying to do, and go kind of oh, I gotta put all that stuff and just that has its place out there and everything, but we're brown rice, right? Our practice and our school is about brown rice and maybe a little bit of salt on there. It's not fancy. It's not the whiz bang, but part of what some of the people are going through that are starting to expand in there, or there's I'll use my type of language, right, that are starting to really develop that line of development, which is their spiritual understanding, their capacity to take on bigger states. It can be a dangerous pursuit.
Yeah, no joke.
It can be a dangerous pursuit. So our school is part of Mahayana Buddhism. So in Mahayana Buddhism, we use we really cherish what's called the 6 practices of a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is a being that wishes for all beings to eventually become enlightened, and we choose not to go off and live in a God realm, right? Until everybody's done, until everybody's there, we're gonna be the ones that come here, and we're gonna keep the party going and getting everybody off of the sinking Titanic. You know what I mean? So
we're gonna get everybody over the line.
Yeah. This our great big huge mission, right? That we're on. But one of the practices that we very much cherish is the word is Kashanti. Okay, Kashanti, and it a lot of times gets what do you call it when you change from one language to another? Mistranslated to patience, right? And it is patience, Patience is great. Patience is a virtue, right? But but we're a Japanese school. We're a Japanese lineage, and the Japanese characters are like little pictures, right? And sometimes they tell a greater story than our language. And what essentially Kashanti is someone holding a knife, right? Someone holding a sharp knife. So really a better interpretation of it than patience is bearing, right? To be able to bear, right? To be able to bear what you're now having to take on, what you're now, as you've softened yourself and opened your heart up to the world and all the good and the bad and the ugly that's happening out there. You now have to be able to bear that, and it can be a lot. And so this is why people are shooken up and challenged, and they see they see some darkness or dark aspects, and then they get obsessive sometimes as they're going through their transformation about that stuff, and then they become spiritual warriors, and they're here to defend the whoa, 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 whoa.
Who's with
whoa,
me?
whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay. The best way, right? The sort of like the other practice that goes really well with Kashanti and to be able to bear is the practice of dana, is giving, right? So they have a special way that they work together, right? When we orient ourselves in a with dana, in a giving and a generosity, and we're able to bear more, right? We're able to, as I said before, hurt more, but be bothered less by that, right? So that's kind of the small piece of advice that I would give to anyone that's going through that, that's having trouble bearing it and going, oh God, I thought this was going to be this beautiful experience. Well, yeah, you can't, what's the story? You can't make an omelet without breaking a few
Without breaking a
eggs,
few eggs.
right? You can't,
Yeah.
and you're not going to be an egg. The eggs aren't going to come back, right? Once the firewood burns, it turns to ash. Okay, it doesn't become firewood again. Okay, so the process, the
Nice.
burning has to happen, right?
Yeah.
But
And then it's
don't
over. Yeah.
yeah, and but don't expect that you get to keep what what was before, right? So part of that process is going, well, how, you know, if I choose to, how can I bear this? How can I bear the pain and the awfulness, the other side of the coin, right? We can't have good without bad. We wouldn't. You can't have the sweet without the sour. It's the nature of the universe. It's the balance of opposites, right? The life is licking honey off a razor blade. So when they're going through this, right, they have to go, okay, the practice that I will take on is to give, right? And if it's as simple as actually like reaching your pocket and giving money to someone that's in need, or doing an act, that's that's a really good start. But it's also just about how we orient ourselves in, even when we go and look at the sunset, right? Don't what we generally want to do, and especially when the world's hard and we have to bear it, we go, well, come on, sunset, give me that great feeling, give me that thing, instead of giving, right? Instead of generously exerting your body, right? And shift, and it's hard to kind of like put that into words, but it's really a shifting of how we're just oriented, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doing a 180, right? So it's like if someone's having that experience where they're going through the tumble dryer of spiritual change,
Nice
yeah,
metaphor. Yeah.
yeah, if that's what's happening to you, well, until you realize it ain't about you or your thoughts and how your life is going to improve when the dryer stops, it's going to keep tumbling you around, right? So,
Mm.
and if you're at the point where that's happening to you, well, there's only one way, you can't, like, as you start to swallow the porcupine, like, it only goes down, right? So you have to go through it, right? You have to keep going and
Mm.
shift yourself to be oriented in that other way that you're giving. It's the only way you'll be able to bear what's happening in the universe right now, because all you have to do is turn on the TV or scroll through your feed and realize that it can get pretty dark out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
Sure
this
can.
you know and I think that that's an important part is if it's hard to orient yourself to give, then start the by being thankful, by being grateful. Make a list every day.
Mm.
You wake up and you go, oh, I have eyelids. Okay, I'm in a bed. I have a pillow. I'm not hanging off of the fuselage of a plane trying to escape a country. You know what I mean? You
Mm.
like
Mm.
it's like if we're on this call or if we're watching it or if we're in this group, you're probably things have probably gone pretty good for you up until now. You know what I mean? So we have to either keep reminding ourselves or having people around us to poke at us and tell us how selfish and greedy that we are slipping into. That's why I literally have a teacher and have someone that I go, well, I'm putting part of my, um, I can't do this on my own. I need you here to help be responsible for me, so you can poke me with a stick and
Mm.
remind me what a jerk I'm being.
Accountable. Need
Yeah,
someone to be
right.
accountable
This
to.
is this is it's. I don't know how people can do it on their own, right? It's
Mm.
it's too much to bear.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's the thing. Like, it's not a. I think one of the best bits of advice in that, when you're going through that, for me, was just to relax as much as you can, be kind and tender-hearted to yourself, and lean into it. Just gently lean in. And when it's too much, pull back, reset, and when you can, as often as you can, go again. It's like stretching. You don't want to
Mm.
you want to freak yourself out. I remember I was training with my mate Smo. He's the Ginger Ninja. I've posted some videos of him on Ninja Warrior, and he's an amazing parkour practitioner as well. And when I was training with him, he'd go, all right, let's do some stretches to warm up. And I would go like into it, really pushing. And he's like, Bretto, you don't want to do it so you shit. You just want to be gentle to warm up, just relax. Just get the body ready to go. And so, take your time with it, do as much as you can, but don't stress yourself out. And the other thing that I'm glad you brought it up, you know, to bear, because and feeling that pain. Not that you should, want to feel pain or anything but a scene kept flashing into my mind of Lawrence of Arabia right at the start, where he's in the barracks. He's one of the English soldiers, and he's got this match and he lets it burn all the way down to his fingers and it just burns out. And all the guys are like, whoa, doesn't that hurt? He says, yeah, of course it hurts. The trick is to not mind that it hurts, you know? And it's not something you want to do all the time.
No.
You don't want to do it too often, you know? But when the skin's back and it's all healed and then you can go again, then go again, you know? And grow that capacity to feel.
Sure.
I remember hearing...
I should watch that movie because that's an amazing, like, I love that.
4 hours of epicness. You know, Steven Spielberg would watch that with no sound every time he was about to make a new movie, just to get all the visuals going and how to put scenes together and all that sort of stuff. But you know, people talk about, like, I post a lot about the superhero culture, and I remember one guy was talking about the Batman, and they said, why is Batman's, like, what's his superpower? He's a human being. Does he have a superpower? Is he superhuman? He said his superhuman ability is ability to bear pain and keep going. And so when you say, you know, when you're bearing, give, it's like, yeah, okay, you might not be going and doing charity work, but, you know, I thought of the Batman giving to Gotham, you know, being who he is, and no matter what the cost, sort of thing. And so that was, yeah, I think that was quite deep where you led us tonight.
Hey man, you led us.
Did I? Well, I don't know, because the dynamic between student and teacher flows backwards and forwards so rapidly. I don't even notice.
There you go.
I forget which one I am half the time.
We've knitted eyebrows. Okay, well, let's see if people enjoyed this, and if they did, then we can have another discussion soon. I think we should. Heck, you know what? Even if they didn't, we should anyway, because
I'm enjoying myself. I'd like to keep doing this regardless. You know, people will figure it out eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah. And then, we can, if people want to give a suggestion of a topic or whatever, we can, you know, usually, like, I try and, you know, it's all connected, right? No matter what topic that we talk about, it doesn't exist outside of those 4 quadrants that we talked about, right? It's like everything, you know, goes into, rubs up against everything else at some point, you know what I mean? So always, I think, important in our conversations in this group anyway, because it tends to be, you know, I see this as a place where people can come, like a dojo, right? Like where people go and train martial arts. You go, well, this is a place we can come and, you know, expand our mind, discuss how we can, you know, although it's not the most important thing, but improve different areas of our life. Realize that we are free to. We don't have to. We don't need to become any better than what we are now. But if we got time on our hands, we can talk about, and maybe what we do another day is we do like a guided, sort of like a visualization or like a guided meditation or something to, you know what I mean? Just have a bit of fun with that aspect of it. But
Sounds good.
Thanks for hosting and for being great company. And yeah, man, we'll be in touch and do it again very soon.
Absolute pleasure as always, Andy. Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for your attention, and we'll see you all in the next video.
May all beings be well and happy.
And bye for now.